Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. The European Union continues to push the Green Deal and mining and energy workers fear for their futures. Several hundred from the Bogdanka coal mine in Lublin and the Powianiec and Kozienice power plants protested outside the Ministry of State Assets. They want immediate talks about the future of their jobs. Miners, power plant workers, trade unions from Solidarity are all afraid they will lose their jobs. At issue are the provisions of the Green Deal, according to which the economy is to be zero carbon by 2050. Energy will not be generated from coal, and that means closing mines. Against the Green Deal, against the closure of mines, power plants. No one says what awaits them in a year or two, in 3, what they can tell their families at home. No one wants to talk, and the prospect of a Green Deal is getting closer. At the beginning of May, a team was set up at the Assets Ministry to spin off coal assets from state-owned companies. However, nothing has happened since then. What is it doing? At what stage is the work? In which direction is it going? What we'll end up with, we don't know. And hence there is fear in our eyes and a threat to our existence. For months they have been demanding talks with the Ministry of State Assets. It mostly ended with an exchange of letters between the unions and the ministry. That's why they stand in front of the Ministry of State Assets building today. It was a sham, an exchange of letters about nothing, about how it's possible, maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow. The trade unions are demanding a minimum 15% wage increase, a plan for energy transition reforms, securing jobs and, above all, dialogue. Never have so many people come here from one workplace. There are 1,500 people. Let it show to Poland. I applaud you. No one came out to the trade unionists, but they conveyed their demands to the Deputy Minister of State Assets, Robert Kropivnicki. They heard no specifics, only a promise of further meetings. Stop the stupid liquidation of mining based on coal. Stop the liquidation of stable jobs. Workers have been seeking talks with management for months. Coincidentally, it was on the day of the protests at ENEA, which manages the Kozienice and Powianiec power stations, agreed to talks. Reminds me of that scene from the Bear movie. We were just passing by with the porters. They wanted to talk to us today at 10 o'clock. Well, sorry, Honourable Management of ENEA. I had other plans for today. Trade unionists stress solidarity with farmers as they are fighting the same thing. The EU's Green Deal ideas are hitting many sectors of the economy and would ultimately make them unprofitable and bankrupt. These include new taxes. The so-called ETS2 means a tax on gas, coal and fuel oil. This will directly hit Poles' wallets. As farmers, we protest and reject the whole Green Deal. The building directives that we will have to comply with, we cannot imagine that buildings will have to be adapted. These are enormous costs. There is no will among the current ruling coalition to abandon the EU Green Deal. On the contrary, the Climate Ministry is headed by supporters of a departure, but from Polish coal. If up to 60% of the coal mined today is to disappear by 2030, this means that Poland will simply run out of energy. Trade unions are announcing that if nothing changes, there will be further protests across the country. As they say, they are fighting not only for jobs, but for the energy security of Poles. According to media reports, the framework agreement signed by the United Right to supply Poland with nearly 500 American Himars missiles launchers is being called into question. The main factor is said to be money, or rather the lack thereof. These reports are investigated by Radosław Jankiewicz. The contract for 486 United States long-range Himars missiles launchers, that is, the Polish Homar A program, is to be delayed and limited, according to reports from Rzeczpospolita. Signed while the Ministry of Defense was still headed by Mariusz Błaszczyk, it came into question today. Everything was all set to negotiate a good deal to buy 500 Himars launchers. Why are so many needed by the Polish army? In order to realistically deter Putin, to realistically deter an aggressor. At the Parliamentary Committee on National Defence in July, the current Deputy Head of the Defence Ministry, Paweł Zalewski, spoke about the American launchers. One struggles to get an answer to the question of whether Poland really needs 500 Himars. According to the framework agreement signed by the previous leadership of the Ministry of Defence, the Americans were to provide technical support for launches and deliveries were to start at the end of next year. The government either doesn't want to rearm the Polish army or can't find the money for it, even though, after all, the money was secured, but the budget hole is growing bigger and bigger, and Russia will not wait. According to the daily newspaper Rzeczpospolita, because of budget constraints and contracts for Korean military equipment already concluded, the real number of purchases may be much lower than planned, and the delivery schedule postponed. The current Defence Ministry authorities have argued from the beginning that they are continuing the arms contracts concluded by their predecessors. We asked another Deputy Defence Minister, Paweł Bejda, about Himars at the Kielce Trade Fair. Believe me, we want to implement all contracts successively, and please note that despite all kinds of criticism from the opposition, we are continuing. What is happening today only proves that declarations have nothing to do with actions. So theoretically, the rulers maintain these declarations, but these declarations are not followed by any action. It appears that the Defence Ministry is planning to reduce the number of launches to about a quarter of the sets ordered by the Law and Justice government. The problem is that the current leadership of the Defence Ministry, despite the invitation to negotiate by their manufacturer, the United States company Lockheed Martin, is waiting for the green light from the Finance Ministry. All this after the announcement of a record defence budget. What we are seeing at the moment, that is, a huge deficit in the budget for next year, and further cuts in defence spending, is evidence that this government simply does not know how to manage anything. Himars long-range artillery sets gain notoriety in Ukraine, attacked by Putin's Russia, where they prove their effectiveness in accurately destroying targets. Himars were supposed to be the main striking force of the Polish artillery. These are systems capable of striking the enemy at a distance of up to 300 kilometers, so the cancellation of these contracts will greatly weaken the Polish army. Our military today has 20 such systems purchased in 2019 by the Mariusz Błaszczak-led Ministry of Defence. The General Staff's planned purchase of nearly 500 more sets was supposed to increase the defence of Poland's eastern border and NATO. Unfortunately, today's reality shows otherwise, as it was earlier with the Korean K2 tanks, of which Poland was to have a total of about 1,000. Deliveries of the first batch, only 180 machines, are underway. The lack of action by Tomczyk and Kosiniak-Kamysz is yet another stage of building not a Ministry of Defence, but a Ministry of Disarmament. Let's hope that the current leadership of the Ministry of Defence will come to its senses and, as it has repeatedly promised, will continue the agreements made by its predecessors, which in the situation of the growing threat from Russia are essential for our security. Radosław Jankiewicz, TV Republika. That Germans are fed up with migrants is proven by the success of the extreme parties in last local elections. In order to improve their ratings, the Traffic Light Coalition has decided to introduce border controls. This is a unilateral suspension of the Schengen area by the largest country in the European Union. Kamil Traska investigates. Some of the staunchest supporters of open borders are now simply closing them all. Germany is introducing controls at all border crossings. Until now, they were in force on the border with Poland and the Czech Republic, but now controls will regard all neighbouring countries. We want to reduce illegal immigration even further. To this end, we are now taking further steps that go beyond the comprehensive measures currently in place. Until we achieve strong protection of the EU's external borders by means of a new common European asylum system, we need to strengthen controls at our border. These controls will also enable the effective expulsion of migrants. To put it bluntly, Germany is just suspending the Schengen zone rules. The goal is to carry out deportations mainly to neighbouring countries. In other words, we will also be turning people back there, which means that the number of turnbacks will increase significantly. Since the introduction of border controls in 2023, we have already had 30,000 reversals, and this number will now be expanded. It is unclear how many of these 30,000 apply to Poland, as no one provides official statistics. On what basis such revocations will take place is also not clear. In theory, Germany has to prove that illegal migrants entered its territory from a particular country, but in practice, there is often no evidence of this. The continuation, or rather expansion, of border controls is unfortunately no longer surprising, as we have experienced the management of similar controls at various borders for many months. Hungarians have already announced that attempts to push for relocations to their country will be met with a response in the form of sending busloads of migrants straight to Brussels.
This action, if carried out, would be in clear breach of the EU law, but also it will be in clear breach of the principle of sincere and loyal cooperation, but also of the mutual trust. In addition, it will also undermine the security of the Schengen area as a whole.
Berlin keeps silent on the situation in Ukraine and does not take into account the fact that Poland, for example, has taken in millions of war refugees in recent years. Professor Tomasz Grosser, expert on international affairs at the University of Warsaw, says Berlin does whatever it wants. It is easier to take in migrants than it is to send them back later. It is certainly more difficult to send migrants from Germany outside the European Union than it is to dump them in neighbouring countries like Poland. Germany's decision is clearly due to the situation on the political scene. The far-right AfD is gaining more and more support from voters precisely because of its strongly anti-immigrant rhetoric, and this in turn is causing a panic in Berlin. The problem is that the same politicians who today talk about the need to close the borders were, only a few years ago, calling on other European countries to open them. It will be a clash of two visions of America. Donald Trump is betting on family, security and the economy. He wants to deport illegal migrants, bring manufacturing back to the United States and support conservative values.
It will be a clash of two visions of America. Donald Trump is betting on family, security, and the economy. He wants to deport illegal immigrants, bring manufacturing back to the U.S., and support conservative values.
What I expect out of Trump is basically what he's been doing. For free America, I need my gas prices back down, what I call normal, because they're awful high now. We need to stop all the illegals at the border. It's crazy. Way too many people coming in this country. We don't even know who they are.
Kamala Harris has boiled her campaign down to talking about abortion, women's rights, and protecting immigrants. And she intends to fight inflation by means of top-down price controls.
Really excited to hear what Kamala Harris has to say. I'm very excited to vote for her. And one of the biggest things I'll just be looking to hear from her is what...
The Trump-Harris debate will take place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a state where most voters are hesitant about who to vote for. It will be shown by the Democrat-sympathizing ABC network in prime time at 9 p.m. In Poland, it will be 3 in the morning. It will last 90 minutes.
The stakes for Tuesday night's debate couldn't be any greater. We saw the June Atlanta debate, the impact that these presidential debates can have in a race, but right now, clearly we have the two candidates, and this debate is occurring at a time.
In Philadelphia, everything is ready. The debate will take place at the National Constitution Center, near the steps in front of the Art Museum, on which Rocky Balboa, played by Sylvester Stallone in Rocky, ran up while training before his fight. Both candidates will also be facing a tough duel.
Ours is a fight for the future. And it is a fight for freedom. Like the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
And we found that out at the debate with Joe. How did that work out? And we're going to find it out again on Tuesday night. Is anybody going to be watching?
The candidates seem confident, and Americans are divided. Kamala Harris has so far avoided talking about the issues most important to her countrymen, shunned interviews, and dodged answering tough questions. But this night, all that will change. This will be a direct clash, and there will be political emotions.
Harris sees a chance to not only lay out her policies, but a chance to rattle Trump, and in doing so, present herself as being more worthy of the office. Trump wants to portray Harris as too liberal to enjoy a broad coalition. We've seen a willingness by him to attack her frequently.
The evening debate may be the first, but it may also be the only one in this campaign. If Kamala Harris does not perform well, her staffers will avoid confrontation until Election Day. The debate will probably help with the most important decision Americans will make come November 5th. The Kamala Harris-Donald Trump debate will be available to watch on TV Republika. Please join us, starting at 2:30 a.m. Polish time. Marcin Szewczak, Republika.
4 private astronauts blasted into space early on Tuesday in a modified SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule, kicking off the company's 5-day Polaris Dawn mission, which aims to test new spacesuit designs and conduct the first private spacewalk.
4 private astronauts blasted into space early on Tuesday, September 10th, in a modified SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule, kicking off the company's 5-day Polaris Dawn mission, which aims to test new spacesuit designs and conduct the first private spacewalk. The crew, a billionaire entrepreneur, a retired military fighter pilot, and 2 SpaceX employees, lifted off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida at about 5:23 a.m. EST. The capsule reached orbit about 9.5 minutes later, and the crew batted around a small plush astronaut toy dog as freefall. Zero gravity became apparent. Crew Dragon separated from its support trunk 3 minutes after that, with onboard cameras revealing a spectacular view of the capsule over the sunlit Earth. The mission's Falcon 9 booster landed safely on a seaborne pad. It is Crew Dragon's fifth and riskiest private mission so far. The spacecraft will eventually settle into an oval-shaped orbit, passing as close to Earth as 190 kilometers, 118 miles, and as far as 1,400 kilometers, or 870 miles. The furthest away any humans will have ventured since the end of the US Apollo moon program in 1972. An attempt to launch last month was postponed hours before liftoff over a small helium leak in ground equipment on SpaceX's launch pad. SpaceX fixed the leak, but the company's Falcon 9 was then grounded by US regulators over a booster recovery failure during an unrelated mission, further delaying the Polaris launch. The launch on Tuesday was delayed about 2 hours because of unfavorable weather. Only highly trained, well-funded government astronauts have done spacewalks in the past. There have been roughly 270 on the International Space Station since its creation in 2000, and 16 by Chinese astronauts on Beijing's Tiangong space station.
That's the news. Thank you for watching it from me. Have a good night and a better tomorrow.